Do I say got it again?
Yes.
Okay.
My apologies, committee. Chair Abelson, we are now live. You may proceed with the meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay. So we'll now call the meeting of the Contra Costa Paratransit Coordinating Council of July 19th to order. And please give your attention to this short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. Are we going to have roll call now?
We are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and then we'll move on to the roll call.
And then, okay. Rashida? Rashida?
Don't think I see.
Is she not here?
No.
Lori, you're here, right? Would you like to do
no,
roll call?
I can't. I don't do the.
You don't want to? Okay.
No.
Okay. I'll just do I don't mean roll call. I mean Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. So at this point, we will do Pledge of Allegiance, and those with other preferences will follow those preferences. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So at this time, I believe we will take roll call.
When you hear your name, please let me know you're here. If you are unable to mute yourself, but you do have unmute yourself and you do have video, give me a little wave, please. Okay. Committee Member Anderson. Committee Member Clark.
Present.
Thank you. Committee Member Cooney. Present. Thank you. Committee Member Dowgelli.
Present.
Committee Member Hammond. Darn. I was hoping she'd make it to one last meeting. Committee Member Ibarra.
I'm here.
Committee Member Kamara. Committee Member Ridgway.
Here.
Committee Member Perry, Committee Member Reese Brown,
Here.
Committee Member Timothy, Committee Member Van Akkeren,
Here, excuse me, here.
thank you. Vice Chair Smith,
I see him.
I see you, Paolo. And Chair Abelson.
Here.
Chair Abelson, please note committee members Anderson, Hammond, Kamara, and Perry and Timothy are absent.
Okay, thank you. With
And
that, okay, go
Bruns
ahead.
is here.
I'm sorry?
Mary Bruns is here.
Thank you.
Yes, I did get you. Thank you.
Okay, is that everyone? So we definitely have a quorum. Do we know how many people are here?
I think for clarification, Mary, don't you and
Yeah, so Lorna, you are the primary, Mary, you are the alternate, so only one person can, well, you can both be present, but only person will have the right to vote.
Is it known who that one person is?
Yes, I believe I'm the commissioner right now and Mary's the alternate, so I'll have the voting.
okay, so Lorna will be on voting.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the,
Madam Chair,
yes,
that leaves us with 9 voting. Does that still leave us in a quorum?
I
Yes.
believe it's
It does.
eight for a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. Fifi, have we received any public comment?
We have not received any public comment.
Okay, so with that, are there any members of the public that would like to comment on items that are not on the agenda? Not hearing any, right?
I don't see any hands, Chair Abelson.
Okay. So then we'll go on to the next item. The next item is the approval of the consent calendar, which now includes the summary of actions from the May 17th meeting. Approval of the consent calendar will be to approve the summary of actions from May 17th and acknowledge the informational items, which include the membership roster and the upcoming meeting schedule. Are there any comments or changes from the committee? I'm not, Michael, do you have something?
Nope, I do not.
Okay, not hearing any. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move.
Michael Dowdjoli moves to approve the consent calendar.
I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, let's vote. All in favor? Now, I
Chair
guess we
Abelson,
have to
do
vote,
roll call vote.
right, by vote.
So when you hear your name, please let me know how you vote. Committee Member Clark,
Yes.
Committee Member Cooney,
Yes.
Committee Member Dowdjali,
Yes.
Committee Member Ibarra,
Yes.
thank you. Committee Member Ridgway,
Yes.
Committee Member Reese Brown,
Yes.
Committee Member Van Akkeren,
Yes, yes,
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes,
And Chair Abelson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously by all present.
I do see a note here that maybe shouldn't be on with the, there's a note on my copy of the agenda. Oh, this is the regular items. Okay, I see now. So we'll move on to the regular agenda items. And the next item on the agenda is the approval of expiration of member terms. There are currently 3 members whose terms are expiring. Michael Deljani, representing East County Riders. Lorna Van Akkeren with the Advisory Council on Aging, and myself representing West County Riders. I will speak for myself to inform the committee that I would like to serve another 2-year term. And at this time, I'd like to invite Michael and Lorna to state their desires. Michael?
Michael Dargelli wishes to continue.
Great. And Lorna?
Yes, Lorna Van Akkeren wishes to continue.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Are there any comments from the committee?
I think Mary Bruns has a question.
Mary?
Actually, I thought I was the one that my term was expiring.
Yeah, let me clarify that. In the case of an agency representative, it's your agency that has the 2-year term. So in this case, when Lorna became, so the agents, basically the agency has been renewed for a new 2-year term, and Lorna just came on as your primary member. So that's just kind of the circumstances, kind of unusual, but it's for your agency it's for the Advisory Council on Aging to go another 2-year term.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that would, in the case of the agency, since you have an alternate, that would include both the primary representative and the alternate, right?
Right.
Okay. Are there any comments from the committee? Okay, then I think the next item is if there's a motion to approve this. Would somebody like them?
I move that we approve the 3 members for an extended term of 2 more years.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
And I second that.
Who was the second?
Lori.
Lori, thank you. So with that, we will have a roll call vote.
Thank you. Committee Member Clark, how do you vote?
Yes.
Committee Member Cooney?
Yes.
Committee Member Dargelli?
Yes.
Committee Member Ibarra?
Yes.
Committee Member Ridgway?
Yes.
Committee Member Reese Brown?
Yes.
Committee Member Van Akkeren?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Chair Abelson?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Now, I want to make sure I know where we are on the agenda. Which agenda item do we now go to?
So we're now on 6B, approval of the Measure J claim forms for the
Okay.
fiscal year of 2021 and 22.
Okay, great. Thank you. So is there going to be a presentation of some sort first?
Yeah, let's have Peter have the floor.
Oh, I thought you were going to do it, Fifi. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so we've attached your packet all of the claim forms that were submitted, which was from all of the operators that are eligible to receive funding under this program. I will apologize in public to to Kimberly Ridgway, and East Bay Paratransit. I completely left her and them off the list when I sent these claim forms out to everybody. I can't believe I did that. And then when we got everybody's claim form back except them, I was thinking, uh-oh, I think it occurred to me that I probably left them off the list, which I did. So Kim was awesome and completed it and sent it in. The one that is in your packet has not been signed, but we have since received the signed form, and Fifi has that. We just didn't get a chance to get it in the packet. So all of the claim forms are here, and staff is recommending that this item move forward to the board for approval, which it is on the board agenda, by the way, for Wednesday night.
Okay, so are there any comments from the, do we want to have a presentation of any sort? That's what I'm wondering.
Unless somebody specifically wants to speak to their claim. Again, we did a more simplified claim this year because, you know, COVID, it's likely that next year we will go back to our old format of, you know, requiring budget information and things like that. But again, everybody's pretty busy right now, number one, with vaccinations and hopefully not, but I suspect, you know, the resurgence of COVID with the Delta variant is causing some issues for some operators. So we'll just hope everybody follows the rules and do what they need to do, and we can get some more people vaccinated quickly so it doesn't get out of control this time.
Thank you. I guess we should ask if there's anybody from the committee that would like to speak on this item. Is there anybody? Doesn't seem to be. And also, is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on any one of these claims? I can't tell if somebody
I
could.
do not see any hands, Chair Abelson.
Okay. Well, this is an eventless presentation. That's pretty good, actually. Okay, then I think the next item is to actually vote on it, acceptance of the claim, so that it can be forwarded to the agenda, the authority. And with that, we need a roll call vote, of course. Could you do that, Fifi?
Sure, we need someone to motion and then second, and then I can move forward. with the
Okay,
vote.
is there a motion?
Chair Clark, so moved.
Thank you. Is there a
This is Kim
second?
Ridgway. I'd like to second.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're ready for the roll call vote.
Committee Member Clark, how do you vote?
Approve? Yes.
Committee Member Cooney?
Yes, approved.
Committee Member Dajali?
Approve?
Committee Member Ibarra?
Yes.
Committee Member Ridgway?
Approved.
Committee Member Reese Brown?
Yes.
Committee Member Van Akkeren?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Chair Abelson?
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
wonderful. Okay. So looking at my script, it looks like the operators do not feel the need to, at this time, to provide an update on services, or would they like this opportunity? Are there any operators who would like to present, or have we?
So Chair Abelson,
Mhm.
this item's on here. I don't know if we actually captured the title correctly here. It was brought up at the last meeting that we take a look at the service areas and the funding requests. I think this was from City of San Pablo that brought this up. And it wasn't agendized at the time, so we couldn't talk about it at the last meeting. So we have agendized it for this meeting, and just wanted to bring up, and I think this is related to in West County. There's been some, I don't know if concerns is the right word, but there's been some, comments from the public regarding service areas and which operators serve which service areas, and there's been some confusion over that. So we've started kind of working and doing some work in that field from a staff perspective. It's taking a little longer than anticipated because of the demographic requirements of kind of the allocation formulas, and kind of finding a really good history as to which operators cover the unincorporated areas of the county in West County. So we're working on that, but I wanted to give Commissioner Clark or Committee Member Clark a chance to maybe confirm that that was kind of where she was going, and maybe also express comments that she's heard from the public or members of San Pablo on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, this was something that I brought up in general. And, we were talking about funding and how the funding was broken up. And me just being in this about a year at the city of San Pablo and kind of hearing some of the comments. And I just thought, I think I said this, for example, last time, was the city of San Pablo doesn't have a DMV, right? City of San Pablo doesn't have a Kaiser. City of San Pablo doesn't have a shopping center, right, that people like to go to. Those are in El Cerrito and Richmond. So we're doing a lot of out of service area for one reason, which is San Pablo simply doesn't have those things. So how do we as a committee give service to residents of an area that need to go outside the area for which the agency is getting funding for? And those are the services that they've requested, right? Because we've all talked about, well, like, do they call us and we go to the limit of the city of Richmond, and then they have to call city of Richmond and then get a ride? You know what I mean? That is just kind of not conducive to them getting service. And then the question of, like, how many non-residents in San Pablo being in unincorporated areas of San Pablo or Richmond or El Cerrito that are calling us and using our service or asking to use our service. And we know that we can give them that service. That's not a problem, right? We're just not funded for it. And the question being, why? And I think that was one thing that I wanted to do, in the next 3 to 6 months as service starts to pick up, that if we get calls from people outside our service area, to do that brief little survey to say, why? Like, did you choose us because that was the first number you found? What are your reasons for asking for that, so that I could bring that kind of information, to the council. So that's kind of twofold. One is residents of San Pablo that really are asking to go outside the limits for which San Pablo is collecting funds for. And how do we look at that? Because some services just aren't in San Pablo. And then the second being, we obviously, a number of us have, I'm sure we have residents, and this is mostly for El Cerrito, Richmond, and San Pablo, I'm guessing. If we have residents that call that we don't have funding sources to service, can we make a commitment as a committee to, ask 3 questions of those and gather that information so that we can present it here to the Paratransit Coordinating Council, just so that we can make sure that we're servicing people and meeting their needs. So that was kind of the twofold. Does that make sense? And I know, Peter, when I had mentioned it, you said that was a good time to bring it up because it's been quite some time since the committee and CCTA has looked at how things are divided and why, and then it might be time to look at it again. So that was kind of where we left it.
Yeah, I'll comment on that.
Chair Abelson, I'd like
Yes.
to ask Ms. Clark a question. Can you tell me what the demographics are in San Pablo that you're speaking of, that don't get service that are getting service out of the area, but you're not being funded for it? What are the demographics involved?
These are mostly seniors. And they're asking for not as many disabled as senior population that cannot drive or does not have access to transportation. That's the demographic.
And how long has this been sitting on the table?
We've had turnover, so as far as I know, this has been a discussion for the city of San Pablo for at least about 5 years. And the numbers have remained pretty steady that we continue to get requests.
Are we not supposed to be a council providing service to the least of them? And why is it so difficult to get the funding to serve? If you don't have the facilities there, it sounds to me like if you don't get funding, services are going to be cut.
Or services are not provided.
Well, that's worry. That's the worst case. And that's my point. Peter, I guess it falls in your lap. Why has this gone so long without being taken care of?
So there's an existing allocation of funds to the different operators. And specifically in West County, there was a division of certain parts of the unincorporated areas. So there's funding that goes to the city of San Pablo. There's funding that goes to the city of El Cerrito, and there's funding that goes to the city of Richmond. All those cities are right together. And then there's some unincorporated areas around, those areas, El Sobrante and North Richmond Heights and some other, there's 3 or 4 other kind of unincorporated areas. And John Cunningham from the county's on the phone. I don't necessarily want to put him on the spot, but maybe he could at least explain what those areas are better than I can. So a lot of those areas were split up between the providers. And as I recall, the city of San Pablo was strictly city limits, and the city of El Cerrito was strictly city limits. And the city of Richmond took on some of those unincorporated areas, and Westcat took on some of those unincorporated areas that they kind of split it up that it made more sense within their service areas. But all this was done, many years ago, and the demographics. So maybe I'll just explain this real quick, and maybe what I need to do is for our next meeting, come back with kind of a history of how the allocations were done and how they were set up and approved. But essentially the allocation looks at 3 demographics. It looks at seniors, it looks at people with disabilities, and it looks at low-income individuals that have a disability, or senior but falls in the low-income classification rather than not. And then those 3 demographics are weighted, and then that's how the allocation is done. And I can't tell you right off the top of my head what the weighting is. I think the low income had the smallest weighting, and the senior disabled had similar weightings. So, that's just the way it was under Measure C. That's how that funding allocation was set up. Measure C was the predecessor to Measure J, which we're currently in.
Will we ever be able to take this kind of funding out of the political realm? And I'm not talking about the overall funding. I'm talking about these very basic funds to provide services to people who absolutely need them. And it seems to me that too many political decisions are being made, and we are not looking at what the actual need is. And that cost, I grant you, I would venture to say that cost would be less than what you're spending collectively now trying to what am I trying to say? Trying to patchwork it together.
I cannot necessarily disagree with you, and wouldn't. I mean, we'd have to look at the numbers, obviously, but it would seem that it could be done more efficiently from an operations perspective.
But my last point on this issue, can we as a council seriously take this issue up and make some very strong recommendations as to how to solve this?
Yeah, you could. If that's what they would be as recommendations. Ultimately, Hello, the funding is based on the transportation expenditure plan that was voted on by the voters, right? So if there's a significant, if the recommendation was to change that in a significant way, or a significance, not even the right word, in a, then that would require an amendment to the expenditure plan, which is a significant process.
But Peter, are you saying that the voters got down to that kind of minutia in terms of how the funds are being spent?
The expenditure plan got down into that detail.
And those are the politicians.
Well,
Well, and if we, Peter, if we don't address the issue, then who will? If we're supposed to be here advocating, for the seniors, for the disabled, for the low income people, then who will?
I would suggest that you let me work on this, and at our next meeting, I'll bring some details as to the history and some maybe things to look at moving forward to start to generate some recommendations.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Just as a comment on what's happened in the not too distant past, San Pablo was sitting on a number of vehicles that I think weren't being very, if at all used, very used, and they were trying to give them to a different department, like rec services or a different department, and they appeared not to be able to spend the money they were getting from this fund.
Yeah, San Pablo does have a surplus, and they've been using that surplus to purchase vehicles, and we are spending down that surplus. So right now, that surplus subsidizes about 40% of our operating costs a year. So that will allow us to do what we're doing for about another 3 years, and then we need to find another funding source to continue to do what we're doing. So yes, San Pablo, I don't know about the vehicles, but I do know, yes, San Pablo has a surplus, and they have been steadily spending that down by providing the service that we do provide.
So it's not clear to me that it looks to me like they're getting more money than they know what to do with in terms of regular operations, because I look at what I know about El Cerrito, and there people who need rides can barely get them because they have so little money.
Let me add a little color to Jean's comments, because hasn't been around the history of some of us. There was a time, maybe it was probably been 5 years now, maybe 6 years, that was a concern. So San Pablo had built up a significant reserve, and I think it was a recommendation both of this committee and WICTAC that they have a study done internally and look at their service, a strategic plan, so to speak, and figure out how to start spending some of that money. And they did that, and then they really started moving forward with spending down that money. They've been, rather than just it's an operating situation, so they just didn't want to spend it all in 1 year and then have to cut the service way back. So they've been spreading it out over the last several years, and I think initially they added a day or a day and a half of service, And they've continued. I think they added another day, another year or two later. And with regard to the vehicles, Janet, I remember they did have some surplus vehicles, and they had proposed to sell them to within the organization. And the requirement for anybody in that situation that uses measure funds to purchase vehicles is to get fair market value, even if it's within the same organization. So the paratransit program sold one of the vehicles, I believe, to Parks and Recs, got fair market value, and that money went back into the paratransit program. So that's the rule regarding sales of rolling stock within this program. It can be done. It's just the fair market value needs to go back into the program. So that was all done in accordance with the CCTA's administrative code, which governs this. So I think it's fair that seeing the city of San Pablo has really stepped up and started to spend down their the surplus that they had, and it now has a good plan in place to continue to provide those services.
Because the way I look at it from El Cerrito is I can hardly ever get a ride at all, even within El Cerrito, let alone into another city. And some services are only provided, in other cities. But we have, the way I look at it, we as an entity have to figure out overall what's more important to us, getting to services we otherwise can't get to, or having say more frequent opportunities to get to the limited services that we have. But and as a backup for people who are ADA eligible, an alternative service is East Bay Paratransit for people who are most in need of the services. And that's true in all of those cities. So I think we need to keep that in mind when we talk about all of this.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Peter, for agendizing it. And I know I would learn a lot if staff were to present, a history, just to get a little more information. And the second part of that, and I think after we get all that history, and I don't know if this is something that just Richmond, El Cerrito, and I can get together, but it would be nice for us to, as we're discussing this, get some more history about what our patrons are asking for. And if we can't service them, ask them, what they need and see how we can, and then bring that back to the committee, right? And just say, okay, here's what we're hearing from the patrons. Because, we've done it very informally, but we haven't done it formally, and we haven't been asking the same questions of our patrons, right? And I think that information is really critical, like Pello, you were saying, right? It's like, well, what is it that they need, and why is it that we can't really give it to them? I think we can. I think we just have to, look more at it. So like I was saying,
yeah,
I just think that it'd be worth doing that for the next 3 or 6 months, and kind of bringing that information back to the committee as well as we're deciding that. But that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we can probably put together some type of simple survey or something that can go out to everybody. There was, I'm trying to remember how many years ago now, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, WCTAC did a West County accessible transportation study. And I know that had an outreach component that gathered a lot of information, which is probably still relevant. That was post doctor's hospital closure, I believe. And that was kind of the main topic at the time, and the main concern at the time, and probably still is a big concern of service over there. I'm sure I shouldn't say I'm sure. I'm guessing, I don't know when the last time Westcat did an onboard or did a survey of paratransit riders. Kim, I hate to put you on spot. I don't know the last time East Bay did it, or if you have a kind of an ongoing comment thing that maybe would be helpful in this case to get some information, to get, you know. So I think, I think we can work on gathering it. We also just did the countywide accessible transportation study. Now in West County, there was a lot of input, and we could look at that, but a lot of that also depended on the West County study because it was only done, like I said, 2 or 3 years ago. So, but I'm sure that the surveys we collected, we can pull out the ones from the 3-city area in West County and kind of see if we can get some themes of what people were asking for.
What I'm wondering about is the impact of COVID on all of
Yeah, that's a good point.
this.
Yeah,
Because I know I'll use myself as an example. My travel methods, my travel patterns, everything is just totally disrupted,
right.
and including right now. So I'm not sure that it would be very meaningful to change all that.
Yeah,
And for example, Meals on Wheels is totally done in a different way, but who knows if it will stay that way or if it'll be different. I mean, these things all impact each other. And so I if we were to do a significant study, I would think we would want to wait until COVID does what I would call settle down. And it seems like at the moment, with the variant that's in play, we are not settling. It's not settling down. It's going unfortunately the other way, COVID.
right. Yeah, and just to clarify, I'm not proposing that we do another study. I'm just trying to think what information we have out there from recent studies, previous studies, and see if we can kind of draw some of the survey work, some of the public outreach that they did, and see if there's some comments that are relevant into what Gene's talking about. But agreed, anything that was done over the last year is going to be kind of, that data is going to be tainted with the way that COVID, treated the whole system and how it's operated in the last year. So we'd have to understand that too as we looked at it.
And
Oh,
I was just gonna say something like what I was suggesting too is, just our operators saying, I'm so sorry, we can't provide that ride for you. They take that reason down. Why, right? Non-resident, whatever it is, refer them to an agency that can. If for some reason they're not using that agency or don't want to use that agency, asking, what is your barrier to using that agency? Tracking that information, it's 2 follow-up questions to someone you're already talking to who's trying to book a ride. And I'm considering just, paratransit, and simply collecting that information, over a couple of months, which is really, just putting it down and then bringing that information back. That's information I'd want to know, what I mean? Just as a provider, just from my city. That's just kind of something that's really simple. That's really kind of tabulated, making sure that everybody's asking at least the same 2 questions to writers that for some reason we have to say no to. Then when we tabulate that information, I think we have a little better understanding of what's happening out there. And while the rides change and the locations and the patterns, there's still people asking that for various reasons we're not able to, or for various reasons they're not using other services. And it would just be nice to know why, so that we can target our solutions.
Well, the other thing is maybe to for the ones who are not using other services that actually are available to them, which is not everybody in the first category, but for the ones that it is appropriate, maybe they don't really understand how to use those services and that those services in fact would work.
And you know,
Um,
our operators, absolutely, if we say, I mean, we try everything to give them resources and help them with resources to get them what they need. That's just kind of a given. That's what we do with our operators, as I'm sure all the other paratransit operators do. But there's still reasons why they gravitate to one service over another, and I don't know what all those are. And I'm guessing there might be reasons out there that people that, on this council aren't aware of. I don't know, and I'm kind of tired of speculating.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to gather that information. It may be that there are no issues and we just need to do a couple of tweaks of how we do business and everybody will be 100% satisfied. That would be the most perfect scenario, but we're not going to know until we gather that information. And I'm just saying that because I've talked to my operators and they can give me some generalizations, but I need a little more specific information. Mm-hmm. So if I need it, I was wondering if maybe some of the other operators needed it and we could bring it back to this council if it is that we can't come up with our own solutions.
Sherry Wilson, it looks like we have a hand from committee member Reese Brown.
Okay. From who?
Committee member Reese Brown.
Okay.
Hi, so
Hi, Lori.
hi there. So I echo some of the same sentiments that I would like to see maybe a survey, but a survey that pretty much addresses giving the patron or the client an opportunity to say how they presently use service and what type of service, supplemental service they would like to see. You mentioned earlier, Janet, that East Bay Paratransit. I'd like to know how many clients in West County are actually using East Bay Paratransit. Are they, I think they would only use it if they have to come out of our service areas, but maybe they don't. And so that if a survey could really ask those type of questions, and then it'd be nice to get together, with some of, I think we said San Pablo and El Cerrito, and kind of find out what the service numbers look like, who they're able to accommodate, what those missing pieces are. And you mentioned something very important now. COVID is one of those major issues right now that's causing maybe transportation, not delays necessarily, but a lot of our seniors and disabled persons are not necessarily getting on transportation now because of that. They're kind of staying in the confines of their home, or they're maybe using another means of safety, like maybe a family member transporting them. But anyway, maybe those are things that we can ask on the survey.
Okay. Are we done with this item, or do we want to? I think you have some to-do. You have some to-do out of this item, I believe.
Yeah,
Peter, correct?
I'll bring back at the next meeting a kind of a history of how all the allocations were originally planned, and then how that, what happened with Measure J and how the allocations changed under Measure J.
So are we just talking about the three service providers, or are we including other service providers?
Well, I think what I'll do is, I'll bring you that information, and I think you as a committee can decide, where the issues are in the county. I think if you're talking if you're talking service area, I mean, West County is the only area that has 5 service providers. All of the rest of the subregions only have single service providers.
Well, I was thinking one thing that might be nice to add to your, I'll call it a list, would be to come back with a description of the kind of service and to whom it's provided for East Bay Paratransit.
Okay.
Which overlaps those operators.
Right. Right. They're one of the 5. So
right. And so for the, but they do more than just overlap that group. They overlap everything from Fremont to San Francisco to, you can go to Central County. You can go, I mean, they have an extensive service area.
Well,
So maybe,
for the,
I
for the,
think it would be interesting to see that there is this overlay. You know, by that, I mean a description of it.
well, we can let Kim bring that forward then. I mean, maybe prepare
Mhm.
that next time, is to provide kind of that description. I guess I'm not prepared in the next 2 months to, get together with the other county service areas that.
Oh, no, this would be a thing. I don't know if Kim's exactly the right person. She may be. But somebody there can just describe it. They know what it is.
Right.
And I'm not sure I can 100% say what it is, but but it's very extensive. And so it seems to me, if we're trying to get the most rides for our dollars, which is a rider's, to me, a lofty goal, because that means that all people like me can get around. So if the local dollars, the Measure J and dollars now, which is what we're talking about, are used to fill in the holes for that other service, that to me seems like a good goal. Because there are things that service doesn't do, and I don't know offhand. I don't have a list, but so that would be a really good thing for our dollars to be filling in, it would seem to me. Anyway, so are we ready to move on this agenda item? Is there anyone else?
Mary Bruns has her hand up.
Mary?
Okay, am I allowed to do this as an alternate?
Well, you're just speaking basically as public right now.
Okay. So Rashida brought up a similar situation. Somebody needed a ride, a place that nobody went. The service area wasn't covered. And just off the top of my head, I said, we need to find a way to be able to go outside of our service area a little bit when it's, if it's logical for me to take a ride that's slightly out of my service area, or a person outside of my service area, I should probably run it by the city council. And that's kind of a big step to take for one situation. But it seems to me, if we're trying to create coordinated transportation, that's kind of what's needed. And maybe a solution would be that that we have agreements that one transportation provider could invoice another transportation provider, because people get more willing to go outside of the powers that be, get more willing to do something outside of your service area when some funding is coming in. So I wonder if we all might consider a kind of a way to invoice each other, so that people who need to get somewhere different, that nobody really covers that. Kind of like Jean was bringing up, that they were serving people that they're not being funded for. So to make that work, could we not invoice the provider that is funded to serve that person, or have agreements that if nobody is funded to serve that area, that we can step outside of the boundaries of our regular, what we do, and what we're paid to do. Am I making sense? I mean, you
Well,
may not agree, but I'm just
it-
asking if this makes sense.
Yeah.
to me, there's an issue that I think people need to hear what it is, because it kind of underlies that. And I think that we don't have the funding in Measure J to provide a huge amount of service at the same level, say that the bigger operators like East Bay Paratransit or County Connection or Central County or whatever that they have, but our function is different to me. And if we understood exactly the coverage about where a person who needs a paratransit ride can get to with what service, I think to me it's kind of amazing. You can get all the way. I know that you can get all the way from El Cerrito to Napa County on paratransit. You can get all the way through San Francisco, and you can get from any. I'm limiting my conversation simply because it's very extensive. The system that the operators, the ADA is what it is, I guess, is the ADA paratransit system that is set up in the Bay Area is very extensive. And it's more extensive than I know even how to describe. And the issue that people don't like is sometimes they have to change vehicles. And it's not that you can't get there. If you can't get there, it's because there's no service, maybe. But in general, you can get there. I've taken rides the length of which you would be amazed at, and and the price tag is like almost nothing sometimes. So I would suggest that we look at what that looks like before we say that every single little operator has to be able to duplicate that. What we ought to do is provide the kind of service that's different and beyond and better in that way than the others, I would think. But anyway, are there any more comments before we go on the agenda?
Michael Dalgelli wishes to speak.
Please.
Yeah, just remember the up and coming is kind of a trial program, specifically out in East County. It's a single ride program. Right now, I believe it connects County Connection, Tri-Delta within that service area. That concept needs to be worked on, although it's a trial program at this time.
And Peter, you were going to say something before.
Actually, I was just going to point out what Michael just said, that there is a pilot going on of a one-seat ride that is learning a lot about, kind of the nuances of these trips and how to provide them and bill each other's programs and things like that. I believe LAFTA is also included in that pilot. And I'm not sure if WestCat is, but they might be as well.
Anybody else, or are we ready to move on?
I don't see any hands, Chair Abelson.
Okay, then you remind me where we are on the agenda?
Yes, we are going to move on to item 6D, the discussion on recruitment of members for the paratransit ridership category.
Okay, and it starts out with a question, which is, are there any comments from the committee? And I think that would mean comments about how we can figure out a way to get more riders on this committee. Because if you look at the membership list, you will see it's an embarrassment in terms of the number of riders from places like, can't find the list right now, but the West County list, I'm the only person on the list. And it's been that way for a long time. And, but it's not the only area for which that is a problem. So we need to, in particular, I believe, work on getting more riders on this committee. I believe that's what this is talking about. And I would like to suggest that there's a central reason for this problem. It's the reason I have a problem getting anybody to be on this committee, which is that it's too hard to get to the meeting. COVID has changed that, actually, right? It's really, especially with Fifi at the helm, making it so much easier. So it, getting everybody to a meeting in a central location when it's all they can do to get across town, and sometimes they can't even do that, it is just asking a little bit too much. So we need to, so I'm wondering, there's some news, I guess I'll call it hardware, software, I don't know what it is. And they're talking about putting it into the picture of how meetings are run with, I think they're expecting it to be usable. I saw a demonstration of what I'm talking about. Don't quite know the name of it, but it allows you to have a meeting such as the one we're having right now. I don't know how to turn, why I can't turn that off. Sorry. It allows you to have the meeting such as we're having now, only the difference is that you could have people who are Zooming from a remote location, or they could be in the central room. And it's even more sophisticated than that, in that it can pick up who, if you've got a room like this, like the one that I don't know if anybody's actually in that room, but right now, but it will, and somebody's talking, then the camera lens will focus on that person. But then if another person's talking, then it'll move over there. And I know that AC Transit is already getting it. Maybe Kim, is Kim here? Yeah, Kim, do you know the name of that program, or?
It's called the Meeting Owl Pro, so OWL.
Mm-hmm. And that might make it easier for people to participate in meetings if we didn't always think of, you have to be able to get into a central part of the county in order to be able to participate. So I know when I've tried to get people, I don't mean to make this a speech, but when I've tried to get people on this committee, I can never get over the location problem. It's just too hard to get to the meeting. So anyway, I'll stop talking, and I hope somebody has answers. Somebody else want to talk about this and how we can get people from the user community in at meetings?
Michael Dalgelli wishes to speak.
Please.
I totally agree with you, Janet. I think that is an issue that, I'm not speaking on her behalf, but we had a member in the East County that was very good, very knowledgeable, but she stopped being able to come into the meetings because of some physical issue. Someone like her might be willing to work virtually, but others are able to get that. So I guess you'd call it a hybrid kind of a Zoom meeting might be an option as well. Thank
Right.
you.
Mhm. Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment?
Hi, Laura.
Yes,
Thank you. I agree that transportation may very well be a barrier for some people, writers attending this meeting, but I would like to explore further what other reasons might be, because I don't think that that's the only reason why. If I recall from our last meeting, and I don't remember who brought this up to put on the agenda, but I think the suggestion was made that maybe a small number of members meet to explore reasons further why writers might not be attending and come up with some ideas about how we might remedy that. So I think that's what I would like to see happen is those on this call who are yourselves writers, and also those of us who work kind of eyeball to eyeball with writers. I think we would be a good group, a small number of us to come together to have that conversation about what the barriers might be.
so having a subcommittee that could we appoint such a subcommittee now, Peter? Or does it have to be agendized?
The items agendized to discuss the recruitment, I can't. Terry Ann, can you give us any direction on this?
What is the actual recommendation?
The recommendation
title
is
on the
to
agenda?
form a subcommittee to explore why it's difficult, why it's been difficult. I'll say it
Chair
in a
Abelson, may I
positive way.
interject?
Please.
Terry Ann, the item is a discussion on the recruitment of paratransit riders for the PCC, but the item is listed as a discussion.
And trying to remember the actual item. Is there a recommendation on provided on this item?
No.
No, it's just the title.
But does
So
it have the
this is a
authority-
suggestion of the recommendation.
Does the chair have the authority to create a subcommittee to look at this further? I think it's fine.
Sorry, I'm pulling up.
Shall we do it?
Wrong item. Sorry. Discussion on recruitment members. I think it's okay to form a committee based off of this item. It's a discussion on the recruitment of members on the paratransit riders category, and you're making an action on the regular agenda calendar to form a subcommittee to look into that. So I believe, yeah, Peter, I agree with you. I think it's fine.
Since you're not really making a recommendation to the authority for anything, which you would need to do as a full committee under an actionable item, but all you're doing is talking about forming a subcommittee to discuss and look into this further in a smaller group. I think it's fine.
So we could do that now and get people on that committee and get it happening.
Yeah.
Today.
Agree. Okay.
So why don't we see who would be interested in being on this committee? And I'm thinking primarily we want writers to talk.
I'll be on it.
They're the ones who can best talk about their issues. So are there people who would like to be on this committee?
I would like to.
Great. Okay. Are there other people?
I would as well. This is Vi Ibarra. And could somebody clarify for me if members of the public would be able to join in the subcommittee conversation as well?
The conversation, yes. But they will not be able to be part of this. Yes.
Okay. And is there anyone else who would like to be? I'll be on it. let's see, so we don't have anybody from Central County, right? But do we have any members?
Currently, you are our only West County writer. We have 2 East County writers. We have Vice Chair Smith and Committee Member Dodgelli. We do not have any of the 3 Central County seats occupied at this time.
Okay, so we, makes us unable. So perhaps somebody else could represent Central County? Interesting,
Correct.
since the meeting actually is in Central County.
Currently, I have committee members, Vice Chair, Smith, Committee Member Ibarra, and yourself, Chair Abelson, as volunteers. Did I miss anyone who might have had their hand up or was waiting to unmute themselves?
Well, we could start there. How's that?
I could ask Rashida if she would put out a request to her passengers.
That would be great.
I will do that.
Okay, then do we need to vote on this item?
No, not at this time.
Okay, okay. So is that,
So that's the last item on the regular agenda items, Chair Abelson. We'll be moving on. If there is no further discussion from the committee or members of the public, we'll move on to the reports.
okay, thank you.
I would recommend taking an action, a vote, an action and a motion in order to appoint that subcommittee.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So that it's in the minutes, yeah.
So is there a motion to
Lorna Van
select the
Action,
members of that committee?
Lorna Van Ack, oh, I'm sorry. I vote, I'm all tied
Do
up.
you
I'm sorry.
recommend?
Yes, thank you. That we take a vote to form the subcommittee.
Okay, with
And I'll
those
second that.
members?
This is Vi.
Okay, sorry, give me just one moment. Was not anticipating I'm sorry, who was the motion and the second? Chair Abelson?
We don't have a second yet.
Okay, who was the motion from?
Van Akron.
And there was a second, I thought, by Bia Barra.
Yeah, this is Vi. I'll second.
Okay.
Bye, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Committee Member Clark, how do you vote?
Yes.
Great.
Committee Member Cooney?
Yes.
Committee Member Dajali?
Yes.
Committee Member Toth? Excuse me. Committee Member Ibarra?
Yes.
Committee Member Ridgway?
Yes.
Committee Member Reese Brown?
Yes.
Committee Member Akron?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Chair Abelson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And so now we'll move on to reports. And the first one is Service Review Advisory Committee reports. And is there a comment from somebody? I didn't quite. Maybe not. Okay. So we actually didn't meet this month, I believe. Do you have anything to add, Kim, for this item?
Just at the last SRAC meeting, which was June 1st, it was pretty uneventful, but they received an update on broker KPIs. They got the broker's report by General Manager Cindy Lopez. There was a short update on contactless fare payment by Laura Timothy, and she'll bring more information back to the SRAC at a future meeting. And then they took a look at the Measure J claim form. But other than that, it was a pretty straightforward meeting.
Are there any questions or comments on that? Okay, hearing none, thank you. And we'll move on to item B, which is the Senior Mobility Action Council report. Is there any comment on this one?
Yes, we
Thank
have
you.
encouraging the ACOA members, Advisory Council on Aging, and the Senior Mobility Action Council members to show up at the meeting, the Measure X meeting, to advocate for some of that funding to go to support the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan, which also includes the consideration of a CTSA for Contra Costa County. John, did I say that right?
Yeah, I think you covered the conversation at SMAC adequately. Yeah, that's the ATS plan, the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan, includes a number of recommendations. The CTSA in many forums is getting probably more, I guess, more airtime, for lack of a better phrase, than it probably warrants. But that is one mechanism that is in the mix. And then I think, did we discuss the measure going to the Measure X Advisory Committee on the 28th? Maybe you mentioned that.
Well, that's what we're encouraging people to attend that meeting, to speak, to support some of the Measure X funding, to go to support accessible transportation.
Right. Great. Perfect. Yes. Testimony at that meeting would be very helpful.
So for those of you that aren't aware, Measure X is a county sales tax measure. That's a general fund sales tax, and they formed a Measure X Community Advisory Committee that is hearing from the community through the various county departments to make funding requests on how to use those funds. And so John will be making a request on behalf of CCTA in the county to fund a portion of, or at least an initial seed money to begin implementation of the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan. So throughout the process, we heard we can't do any of this without new money, and here's some new money. And so we're going after it. So hopefully we can solve some of the issues we're talking about today that have lacked funding with this new money.
That's it then.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions from anybody? Okay, I think we did already have that one. Okay, thank you. The next item is correspondence and communications. And under this, I'm asking if any members of the committee want to add a topic for our future agenda items.
Member Dalgelli wishes to speak to that.
Please.
Oh, just is our next meeting going to be virtual? Have anybody decided that? I know we were talking earlier about possibly going hybrid, just to make sure that we know that what our next meeting will be. Peter, can you address that as well?
I think probably there's more knowledge on this than me from Terry Ann, if she can address it.
Hello. So right now we're staying virtual until we get direction from the governor on the executive order and lifting the Brown Act requirements that are currently in place that has been lifted. I believe he's supposed to make an announcement in September. So we're anticipating that that may have changes reflected in January, but at this time we really don't know. And we're just moving forward with virtual. We do have a dark month in August, so we don't have any meetings. So the next meeting we'd be looking at would be, and you have one bi-monthly anyway, so we're looking at September. So my guess would be, unless he changes something overnight, it will probably have a few months for us to kind of figure that out. And so we're anticipating January. But at this time, we're just kind of playing it month by month until that comes out. So I would anticipate for September to continue with the virtual meeting. We are looking and hoping, as you mentioned earlier, Chair Abelson, that in the future we can handle these, we can do these meetings maybe in a virtual or hybrid format. And we are trying to get that, push for that in legislation. There is currently 3 bills out there pending. So we're just watching it all and kind of waiting to see what happens. So I do anticipate in the future that they may require some form of hybrid meeting. So that's all, we're just kind of waiting and just following the legislation and what's going on out there with the governor, as well as all of the county public health mandates as well. So we're following all that and just kind of waiting. But until, as long as we're allowed to have virtual, we'll just continue having the virtual meetings until we're told that we can. So is there any questions on any of that? I know it's all just kind of a waiting game, and, I think everyone's kind of in the same boat of trying to figure it all out.
Guess I don't hear any. So are there any other agenda items that any committee members would like to add for the next meeting? I would like a report back from the committee that was created to look at the issue of membership on this committee of users, riders. So that will hopefully direct us to have a meeting. So Peter, could somebody contact the members of the people who signed up to be on that committee, and so we can figure out a date that we could meet?
I think
Chair
Fifi-
Abelson, I'll be contacting the subcommittee members outside. Sorry, Peter,
Oh,
to really
great.
jump on it. Outside of this meeting, to contact them to see when is the best possible time for them to meet. We'll put together an agenda, and hopefully it will be prior to the September meeting, and we can report back then.
Can we do that on Zoom, the meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Solving the number one problem. Great. Okay. Are there any other topics? I'm sure that by the time September rolls around, that there will be some topics that have also rolled around.
Yeah, I'll bring the history of the allocation stuff that we discussed earlier.
Okay, super. Anybody, anything else?
Mary,
Please.
I forgot to mention that the Advisory Council on Aging is working on, or will be working on, the master plan for aging. So the way it will work is that through each of the work groups in the Advisory Council on Aging, they will take on some of the master plan for aging goals. So one of the goals that will be in the coming year is to work on transportation. So you all would definitely, if you were interested in participating in this discussion, if you can let me know or let Fifi know to let me know, to make sure you get an invite, because it will not just be it will not be just Advisory Council on Aging members working on this. We would like to involve as much of the community as possible. And since you all are interested in transportation, you might want to consider in participating in this.
Thank you. And are there any other items? Okay, I think we are ready for adjournment, and I want to thank everybody for all of their comments and thoughts during this meeting, and have a very nice summer. See you in September, as they say.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.